All right, here it is, how to pre-screen some tenants. Should be less than 10 minutes for this video and give you some good ideas on how to get going when you have a property available. Go ahead and subscribe here for more videos like this. Like us right here and leave a comment down below for anything else you want to know about. All right, into the slides. So it's great having a property available, but how do you get a tenant in there? Well, we'll talk about these three things. Decide your requirements, require the pre-screening, and find your screening service. It's 3 steps to make your life a lot easier to fill your soon-to-be available properties. And first, we'll talk about deciding on your requirements, and here we are. Keep in mind, this isn't financial advice. I'm a YouTuber. This is entertainment only. Don't listen to anything I say. I'm not your lawyer. I'm not your realtor. I'm not your financial advisor. This is a YouTube video. All right, here we go. So I'll talk about what my requirements are for some and or all of my properties to give you kind of a baseline. It's up to you what you do. But first off, what we want to talk about is a FICO or credit score for your tenants. Do you want to have a minimum credit score? Most landlords do. Landlords that want to make sure their tenants have decent credit do and a decent payment history on things. That's definitely important to most people. You want to make sure that the tenant's going to go ahead and pay their rent, don't you? So, so my FICO score for some or all of my properties is 670. You might say, oh, well, that's really high. That tenant might just go buy a house. Yeah, well, it's possible. We had a question come through on a blog today, and it was about the FICO score. One of their prospective tenants that they were trying to pre-screen said, hey, if my FICO was that high, I could just go buy a house. Well, go ahead and do that then. Go ahead. What are you waiting for? Go ahead, do it. Point being that not every tenant, including myself, wants to buy a house. Maybe they just want to rent where your house is or your property is so that they can live there for a year or 6 months or a couple years, whatever, and then move on. Maybe they are moving to the area. A little story, had a tenant from out of state apply, and they wanted to wait a year or two to purchase a home, even though that tenant was pre-qualified for a mortgage. So I was like, okay, yeah, hey, no problem. We'll go ahead and run the credit and all of that and get you into the house. So it turns out their FICO is good enough to move in. They're pre-qualified for a $150,000, $180,000 mortgage. They could have just bought a house, but didn't want to. They wanted to rent. So the fact that your FICO is high is your requirement. It's not the tenant's requirement. They don't get to decide that. Usually if a tenant has a FICO above, 650, they're not making too many payments late. Maybe there's some utility bills or something that's driven their credit score down that they didn't pay. Maybe they didn't pay a cable bill. I don't know. It doesn't mean they're not going to pay rent. If you make $650 the minimum and they have a $630, then just decline them. That's how it is. It's you make whatever your minimum is, your minimum, and go from there. So income, you need to make sure that they make enough to actually live in the house. My requirement for all of my properties and most rental properties, heck, if you go to a commercial landlord that owns 300 units in a giant apartment building, typically it's 3 times the rent. You have to make that much to qualify for whatever unit you want as a bare minimum. Obviously, better or higher income is much better, and they would possibly maybe waive a FICO requirement if you make 20 times the rent and can just pay for the entire year up front. If that's the case and that tenant will just pay you the entire year up front, yeah, go ahead, move in. There you go. No credit check needed. Go ahead and write me a check. I don't know if it's $2,000 a month for the home. Or go ahead and write me a check for $24,000, and as soon as that clears the bank, I'll toss you the keys. Yeah, go ahead. And then you'll also need 1 month's rent as a security deposit, which would be an additional $2,000. Not that that has happened to me. It really hasn't. I'm sure it has in some cases, but whatever. So the other requirement I have is no felony or violent criminal history. So yeah, you don't want people that are stealing cars and running a chop shop out of your garage to be living in your home. you're probably gonna get some backlash on that as a landlord, and or complaints from the neighbors if they're stealing stuff and stashing it throughout the property. If there's like stolen cars, boats, I don't know, whatever else somebody might steal just sitting on the lawn, it's going to become a problem, and you as a landlord are going to have to deal with it eventually. So yeah, that's my requirement. No felony or violent criminal history. And then also my requirement, no evictions ever. That means forever. That doesn't mean the last year. That doesn't mean the last 5 years. That means forever. So if that tenant's had an eviction, I don't know, 5 years ago, it's like, hey, look, it says right on my ad, that's the other part of this I'll discuss in a moment. Hey, it says right on my ad, no evictions ever. I'm sorry that you just paid $40 for this credit and background check, but it says you have an eviction. You know you were evicted, and you went ahead and applied anyway, so there's nothing I can do about it. Sorry. So with all this stuff, what you're going to do, make sure it's all legal in your area. Again, this is not legal financial or investment advice. Some of this stuff, it varies. Some stricter or more blue areas won't allow you to list some of these requirements. Make sure that these requirements work in your area. I personally wouldn't purchase a home as a rental property in any area that would prevent me from listing any of these 4 things. Keep that in mind if you're going to buy a house. But point being, you put all of this stuff in your ad. Like, hey, Mr. Tenant, this house requires that you have a 670 credit score, make 3 times the rent as income, no felony or violent criminal history, and no evictions ever. Put that right in the ad as long as it's legal in the area, and you will weed out a bunch of tenants that just won't even bother applying. Also put in there, hey, background check is required. If you put that in there and people actually read the ad, they won't even bother applying or bothering to go see the house because they know they're not going to qualify. Okay, back to our list. So the other thing you can do, make sure it's legal in your area again, is require a pre-screening. So when that tenant calls you, you can have these pre-screen questions ready. And we'll talk about some services to do this with as well in a moment. But you can have, okay, I need to ask you, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, do you have a 670 or better FICO score? And they'll say yes or no. And if they say no, well, then they're disqualified. So then you ask them, hey, do you make 3 times the rent for income? You need to make, if it's $2,000 a month, you need to make $6,000 a month to actually live here. That's $72,000 per year. Do you, Mr. or Mrs. Tenant, make $72,000 per year with you and all of your co-applicants? And they will say yes or no. If they say no, you say, hey, I'm sorry, you don't qualify for the house. There's other properties available that you may qualify for, but you don't qualify for this one. And you do the same thing for those other 2 questions. Have you ever been convicted of a violent crime or a felony? Yes or no, blah, blah, blah. You get the point. So, go back to that other list, just rewind in the video. Here, I'll just pull it up, take a screenshot of it. Take a picture of this with your cell phone right there. Snap a picture of it. I don't know if you're listening to this on your cell phone. Just snap a screenshot, and you just ask them this stuff when you're talking to them on the phone. So yeah, okay, the next thing to do on how to pre-screen your tenants is find your screening service. There are services out there that do all this for you on an email and online basis, so you don't have to really deal with it. Here we go. So guess what? The service we use the most to actually look for houses, Zillow, they've decided that they can make a lot of money on the rental side as well by, number 1, processing rental applications and listing and charging you to list your properties. They give you 1 property to list for free, and then additional ones are $10 per month after that. So yeah, they make some money there. They also make some money when you run a background check and all that application stuff through them. So yeah, that's where they're making some additional money over there at the Zillow. So yeah, this is just a list of 3 that I've used. I mainly use this one right here, Pre-Approved Renter, right now for pre-screening and rental applications. I use Avail for my rent collection and lease building, and I use Zillow for my actual property searches and property listing. So yeah, I use all three of those services for each one of my homes. You can really just pick one, and each one of these will do all three. I split it up like that because Zillow's best to advertise with, but costs a lot more than Avail to actually manage your property and collect rents with. And then Pre-Approved Renter was the least expensive one for background checks. So yeah, I used all three. Anyway, so Avail's good at that too. So is Pre-Approved Renter. Pre-Approved Renter probably has the easiest pre-screening process. As far as pre-screening goes, what Pre-Approved Renter will allow you to do is put together a free pre-application for that tenant so you can send it over to them. That's a pre-screening, right? It lists everything. They can give you all the info if they want to, or they can just give you the required info. Do you make 3x the income? How much is your income? Do you have a criminal history? And the other questions. Yeah, you get the point. Is your FICO, do you have good credit? All that stuff. So, and it doesn't check their credit. It just has them fill it in. So when they send it back to you, they're pre-screened, and you know that according to them, they qualify, and you will actually find out when you run the actual application. So yeah, before you get into deciding on which service you want to go with for any one of these things, check out all three of these sites. You can also just kind of Google, hey, how do I pre-screen a tenant? You'll see this video pop up. But also you will see a bunch of different services pop up that'll do it for you. Yeah, and just go through and pick which one's best for you and go from there. And we're back at the first slide. So if you do those things, if you ask your tenants what their FICO is, if they have a qualifying FICO, if their income is 3x the rent, no felony or violent, and all that stuff, what you're going to do is save a ton of time. You can pre-screen these people. They won't be coming through your property and wasting your time or your realtor or your broker or your property manager's time to show the property. They've been pre-screened and either qualified or disqualified. And it will save you a bunch of hassle when people go through and pay $40, $50, or $60 for all that background and credit check and all that stuff. And then they come back and complain to you about it, even though you told them, hey, there's no refund on that. I'm not making any money on it. It's the service that's billing you. You know, go talk to them. So yeah, it saves you a bunch of hassle if you just pre-screen them. It's free for you. It's free for the tenant. It helps you both. There's nothing wrong with it. Make sure that all of those questions are legal in your area. And then also you can just ask them those questions on the phone and fill it out for them so you don't have to email it and wait for them to get it back to you. One side note before we leave, Zillow right here has a great little process thing where people fill all this stuff out in their profile. So if you're advertising your house on the Zillow, they'll go ahead and when they ask for you to show them the house, Zillow will send you all that info, all that pre-screen info for many of these tenants if they've filled it out. So the tenant will come over already showing you they make $100,000. They say their FICO is 670, 690. Maybe Zillow already ran their credit and Zillow verified it at 790. I don't know. I don't think Zillow verifies it or will even tell you that because they're charging for the credit check. They're making money. But the tenant can tell you they think it's a 670. And all that comes over on their profile, so they're already pre-screened when they apply through Zillow for a showing, okay? That doesn't mean they have to go to the lease through Zillow. That's why I use Avail for leases and Pre-Approved Renter for the actual application process. But Zillow gives a good automatic pre-screen, so yeah, makes it more convenient. Yeah, so that's it. Like I said before, give us a little like down here. There will be another video right here for you. Hopefully we'll get some more how-to videos out here. These are pretty easy and good to make. And then a subscribe right here. All right, hey, y'all, take her easy out there. We'll talk to you later.